Hi there, this is Jorge Ramon with MiamiCoder.com, and in this video I want to talk to you about the process that I follow to develop mobile applications. It's a very simple process. It starts with a requirements gathering step, and then I follow that with an environment setup step, after which I proceed to create user interface prototypes, both low and high fidelity. Then I build the UI and move on to create the client-side controllers and services that will manipulate that UI. Then I move on to the server and I create the controllers and the services on the server side. And the final two steps involve end-to-end testing and packaging and deployment. Let's take a look at these steps in more detail so you understand what happens inside of each. Like I was saying earlier, requirements gathering is the first step, and this is where I try to talk to the people who know the most about the project and the problem to be solved. Generally, these would be your end users and your subject matter experts. My goal in this step is to gain an understanding of what problem we're trying to solve and then figure out what type of features are needed in the app. After that, I move on to setting up my development environment. And this is where, based on the requirements that I gathered, I pick the tools that I'll use, and I also pick my code libraries and the frameworks that I will need to build the system. And this is also where I set up my source control mechanism. Then I move on to creating user interface prototypes. First, low fidelity, and I tend to do this in short sessions with actual users and users of the app or subject matter experts, people who really know what's needed. Then I try to build the high fidelity UI prototypes, and the goal here is to get as close as I can to the final user experience that we're after. Again, this is working with end users, clients, or subject matter experts. After that step, I'm ready to start building the UI. And I typically use mock or test data for this step because it allows me to build the UI very quickly and validate it. One thing is to have UI prototypes, paper prototypes, or use tools that create those prototypes. But another thing is actually to see the UI working on a device or on an emulator. And this is what I'm trying to do here very quickly without having to bring data down from the server, without having to save data to the server. So that's why I use test data for this step. Then I move on to creating the controllers and the services that will interact with the UI. This is all on the client side. And in this step, what I do first is I create behavior-driven tests. Then I code the controllers and the services so they satisfy those tests. The same thing happens on the server side. I create behavior-driven tests, and then I code the server-side endpoints and the services that talk to the databases on the server side. Then I'm ready to test. At this point, I have all the pieces, or I'm supposed to have all the pieces that make the application, both client-side and server-side. So I'm ready to test, and I start with emulators and then move on to actual devices. There's nothing like testing on an actual device. You probably know this already. And these tests give me a good idea. They start to give me an idea on what the final performance and what the final user experience will be. So this is a very important part of the process. This is usually I iterate over these steps. It doesn't take one time. It takes multiple times to get this right, or at least to a level where users are satisfied and we can have one version, the first version, ready for production, for release. And then I move on to the packaging and deployment. And this is where I figure out how we're going to get this application to the end users, to the actual devices. Is it going to be through the App Store? Is it going to be through an enterprise portal? And that's the end of the process. There you have it. It's very simple steps. The goal here is to validate quickly, gather requirements, and see how close you can get to satisfying and solving the problem. If you want to learn more about how I develop apps, if you want to learn more about how to develop your own apps, I have a number of tutorials ready for you and on my website. So head over there. It's miamicoder.com, and I'll see you there. Leave your comments about this video, about the other tutorials. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. Until the next video.